So, welcome to another episode of Generally Speaking.
It's about crime.
Yeah. So here we are.
Here we are.
And, I have to give you a hint of what we're talking about today.
Okay. I have no idea what we're talking about.
Part of me wonders if we should eat the cookies first, because you might lose your appetite.
Is this a poisoning or something? Or is this like
No, I'm not
some sort of gruesome
think I'm
murder?
trying to poison you now?
I hope not. Is this Lizzie Borden or something?
No.
Like
I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but
Okay.
I mean, it is kind of gruesome.
I need another hint. That's not much of a hint.
I referred to it my last episode that I did.
The last
And I remember you cringed when I mentioned it.
during the Amelia Earhart thing.
I mean, it was in regards to the podcast that I listened to called Against the Odds.
Oh
and
no,
it was
is this
like
the one about the
of ones-
submarine?
Yeah, but it was not that one.
Oh, okay. Is this about the Nautilus or something? Or oh, I know which one it is.
What is it?
The one that looking for the Titanic?
Nope.
No, another submarine. Is it about the Titanic?
Nope.
I'm running out of.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
It was
give me
a
another-
very minor mention, so it doesn't surprise you.
No, it was on one of those survivalist things, right?
Yeah.
Oh, was it the coal miner?
Nope.
Okay. What else did you
You
talk
have a
about?
good memory other than that. You're missing
What other things?
everyone but that.
Well, was that one? Was it like a mountain expedition or something?
Something.
Oh, it was their Donner Party? Is that
Ding,
what
ding,
it is?
ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, let's eat the cookies first. Oh, man.
Now, how much do you remember
Yeah.
or know about the Donner Party?
I mean, I've seen some shows on the Donner.
Have you really?
Yeah.
I guess I should be
I
surprised.
feel like PBS had those American Experience shows, and maybe
Yeah.
they did one on the Donner Party, like where they got stuck and then what happened to them.
Yeah.
Or some of them, anyways.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
All right, let's talk about it. Let's get started. So I didn't want you to see my map of the California Trail because that would
Okay.
give it away.
Is that what they were taking? They were okay. Well, I'm guessing we're gonna get to that.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to jump ahead of myself.
Yes. So as I mentioned the last episode that I did, I had talked about the one podcast that I really like, which is Against the Odds, which is about a bunch of survival stories, and I did mention the Donner Party last time. So I thought that would be good to tackle today.
Great.
Because I know the gist of it, but I didn't really know all the details around the story. So the Donner Party, also known as the Donner-Reed Party, left Springfield, Illinois in April of 1846 and headed west in pursuit of the most fertile farmland in the nation. The two brothers, Jacob and George Donner, were wealthy landowners, and then James Reed was a local business owner. They relished reports of the California's free land. Just remember, California was not a state at this time.
Right.
It's still a territory.
Right.
And its excellent climate and ease of farming. So that's really what pulled.
So they were going to California. That was
Yes.
cool.
Yeah. And they had great farmland in Illinois.
Right.
But they were always, the two brothers at least, were always in this pursuit of the best farmland.
Yeah.
Like, what else is out there?
Right.
We gotta find
What
it.
did they grow? Like what was their crop?
I don't think I read into that at
Okay.
all, actually.
Okay.
So I apologize.
No. I'm just wondering because, like, California is known for like orange groves and stuff. And
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think they
maybe
were just
were
trying to
like-
find the most fertile land. They
Yeah,
didn't mention what they grew in Illinois,
Yeah.
but they were pretty successful where they were,
Mhm.
and then they were packing up and leaving, which I can't even imagine doing. Like, just thinking about moving to another state now is kind of frightening, and then just moving across the country to places that have not even been explored yet.
Yeah, I've moved many times.
Yes.
And moving is not fun.
No.
And I can't imagine it was probably less fun moving in a stagecoach.
Yeah.
And sleeping in that and like going into, like you said, territories that.
And who knows what you're going to
Exactly.
encounter,
Yeah.
wild animals.
Yeah.
So the families of the brothers, George and Jacob, and the local businessman, as I said, James Reed, they left April 14th, 1846, with the addition of roughly a dozen immigrants and employees. This initial party numbered about 31 people,
Okay.
and within a month, the Donners and Reeds had reached Independence, Missouri. So there, on May 12th, they became part of the main wagon train that was headed west. So they kind of picked up some more people
Yeah.
and headed west.
Now, was there like a trail that they could follow that had already been?
Yes,
Okay.
the California Trail.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
The expedition was pretty much doomed from the start because they left Illinois too late in the year, and they left Illinois with an insufficient amount of supplies.
Mhm.
The emigrants needed to begin their journey late enough in the spring for there to be grass available for pack animals, but also early enough so that they could cross the treacherous western mountain passes before winter. So it was kind of like the sweet spot for departure.
Yeah.
And that was sometime in mid to late April that they should have left. But for unknown reasons, they didn't leave until May 12th.
Okay, so they were
leaving
behind.
Independence until May 12th.
Yeah.
So the group made good progress all the way to Fort Laramie, which is now southeastern Wyoming, and they covered about 650 miles in 6 weeks. So they're feeling pretty good about themselves.
Yeah.
On July 20th, 1846, the company divided, with most of the wagon train then turning north toward Fort Hall in modern southeastern Idaho, and using the well-known Oregon Trail to continue the journey west.
Okay, so some of them are going up this way.
Right, so they're going north over the Great Salt Lake. That was the one group. The Reeds, the Donners, and a number of others chose to head southwest toward Fort Bridger. Fort Bridger is about here.
Okay.
But their plan is going to be to go south.
So they're going to go on this trail here?
Yes.
Okay.
So when they're at Fort Bridger, James Reed convinced the rest of the group to leave the established trail and take a new and supposedly shorter route, which would then shave 300 miles off of their route. In reality, it was 125 miles longer.
And so they don't have what kind of maps do they even have?
Well, so they're following this unscrupulous trail guy named Lansford Hastings. It was a gentleman who supposedly made this trek before and was telling them about the shortcut.
Okay.
Hastings was not at Fort Bridger at the time. He was leading an earlier wagon train along his new route, so he was going ahead of them.
Okay.
He left word for the Donner Party to follow, promising that he would mark the trail for them.
So this is the cutoff here. This is where, so they're here.
Yes,
and
exactly.
then
This is where they
here.
branch.
Okay.
So the two groups who were initially together,
Yep.
some
Split
went
off,
north, they
yeah.
wanted to stay on the established trail. Some went south,
Yeah.
looking for the shortcut.
Yeah.
So Reed had, actually, while he was at Fort Laramie, he had been warned about attempting this route by an old friend from Illinois, who had just completed the west to east journey through Hastings Cutoff, which is what it was called.
Okay. Yep.
But the group chose to press ahead. The party elected George Donner to serve as its leader, and at its peak, the Donner Party would number about 87 people, 29 men, 15 women, and 43 children. So I don't think people realize that it was full families who were making
that's
this
a lot
trip.
of people.
In 23 ox-drawn wagons. So the group of 89 immigrants left Fort Bridger with their 20 wagons and headed for Weber Canyon, where Hastings claimed there was an easy passage through the rugged Wasatch Mountains. Wasatch?
Yeah, Wasatch.
Rhymes with Sasquatch?
Sort of, yeah. I wonder if that's where they got the name.
Yeah, maybe. There was just one problem. No one had ever tackled the Hastings cutoffs with wagons.
So how did they were traveling?
Not even Hastings himself.
He was on horseback.
He must have been on horseback.
Yeah, okay.
So when they reached the head of the canyon, they found a note from Hastings attached to a forked stick. Hastings warned the Donner Party that the route ahead was more difficult than he had thought. Just what you want to see, right?
Right.
He asked the immigrants to make camp there and wait until he could return to show them a better way.
I don't like the way this is going.
I know.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna
yeah,
say that.
that's fair.
Yeah.
So Hastings' note troubled the immigrants. To return to Fort Bridger, which is where they just came from, to pick up the established route would have meant wasting several days.
And so they're already leaving late. They don't have a lot of time to spare anymore.
But they think this is a shortcut.
Yeah.
They're already running into problems.
Yeah.
They don't want to turn around because it's going to add several days
Right.
onto their trip,
Right.
which would have been better.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing. So after 8 days, so they waited for Hastings for 8 days.
That's like a week. That's longer than a week.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Hastings still had not arrived.
Oh man, I don't like this guy. I don't trust him. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah. The immigrants sent a messenger up the canyon to find the guide. So then the messenger returned several days later with instructions from Hastings. So they found him.
Okay.
To follow another trail. And the immigrants complied. The alternate route, however, turned out to be even worse than the Weber Canyon Road, and the immigrants had to carve a fresh road through thick trees and boulder-strewn ground. So I couldn't even imagine making your own road basically for all these
Yeah.
ox-driven or ox-drawn wagons to.
Plus you got like 40 kids with you too.
Yeah.
Like imagine.
It's-
We know how hard it
they
is.
had elderly people who were just like laying in the back
I
of a
can't
wagon.
imagine.
And
No, I cannot imagine.
the Donner Party finally made it through the Wasatch Mountains and arrived at the Great Salt Lake. Rather than saving them time, Hastings' shortcut ended up adding nearly a month to the Donner Party's journey. When they rejoined the main California Trail, it was late September.
So they went around the south part of the lake and
Yeah,
then
and they
rejoined.
got back
When they
on
could have
the
just
trail.
gone this way and been like
Yeah,
way over here.
yeah. So it was late September when they finally rejoined the California Trail. All the other migrants of the 1846 trip, you know, the other group that split off from them, they had completed their journey to California at this point.
Oh wow! Oh my gosh, they're already there.
Yeah.
And these guys are like here, and they've got to go through. This is Nevada, right?
Yeah.
So they've got to go through all these mountains here.
So the Donner Party was racing the weather to clear the passes in Sierra Nevada. And tensions were running high
No kidding.
among the exhausted migrants, and on October 5th, an altercation between Reed
Yeah.
and an immigrant employed by another family ended with Reed fatally stabbing the man.
Yikes.
Supposedly the man, I guess, had assaulted his wife, and that's what caused the stabbing, but this is all
Yeah.
based on witness accounts.
Right.
And,
Right.
who really knows. Some members of the party suggested that Reed be hanged, but he was instead banished from the company. Reed would continue west on horseback to Sutter's Fort in the Sacramento Valley to get supplies, while the rest of his family remained with the Donner Party.
I don't want to make any predictions about
No,
how this
don't
going to
either.
turn out.
Unfortunately, their difficulties were only beginning.
Oh no.
The shortcut, as I had said, had cost them many days, and the Donner Party crossed the Sierra Nevada mountains late in the season. Despite the Hastings cutoff debacle, most of the Donner Party still managed to reach the slopes of the Sierra Nevada by early November 1846. Only a scant 100 miles remained in their trek. But before the pioneers had a chance to drive their wagons through the mountains, an early blizzard blanketed the Sierras in several feet of snow. So mountain passes that were navigable just a day earlier soon transformed into icy roadblocks, forcing the Donner Party to retreat to nearby Truckee Lake, which is actually now known as Donner Lake,
No.
and wait out the winter in ramshackle tents and cabins.
Can you imagine how cold it must have been?
I know.
I mean, I cannot even.
So the Donners, their progress was delayed by a wagon accident, and they made a similar camp a few miles farther east on the trail near Alder Creek.
Okay.
And the interesting thing was, the other camp made the makeshift cabins, and then the Alder Creek camp, they were forced to use the canvases off their wagons as makeshift tents, and that's how they, I can't imagine camping in those things and trying to last out the winter.
I don't even like camping now, like with like high quality tents. Like, no, thank you.
So 8 days of almost continuous snow followed, during which time many of the oxen, the chief reserve of food, wandered off and were lost. So things still aren't looking good.
Yeah, it's really depressing.
Of the 81 people who became stranded at Truckee Lake, more than half were younger than 18 years old. 6 were infants. Most of the group's supplies and livestock had already been lost on the trail, and it wasn't long before the first settlers began to perish from starvation. No surprise.
Yeah, no surprise.
So on November 20th, Patrick Breen, he was one of the immigrants, whose family had joined the party in independence, began a diary which he continued until March 1st. So his account of the winter of 1846 to 47 would provide the only contemporary written record of the Donner Party's ordeal. All the other records that we hear of, they're all eyewitness accounts or what their experiences were. So remember James Reed, the man who was banished?
Yeah. Guy who stabbed somebody?
Yeah, he stabbed somebody. He reaches Sutter's Fort on October 28th. So he rests for 2 days, and then he attempts to take provisions back to the wagon train, but deep snow blocked his way. So he's stuck in California.
Okay.
He tries to organize another relief expedition, but at this time, the Mexican-American War is going on, and it disrupted efforts for him to be able to find enough people to go with him
Right.
as a relief
To
effort.
get back there. So
Because everyone else is volunteering for the war.
Right.
I read somewhere too that he took part in the war too.
Did he really?
Yeah, so he volunteered
Yeah.
his time while his family was in the mountains somewhere. Anyway, so while he was also in California, he took some steps to secure land for himself in Santa Clara, where he would eventually bring his family.
Oh, okay.
Hopes of bringing his family.
Okay.
I'll leave you in suspense there.
Okay, yeah. I don't know.
In early February of 1847, the citizens and naval officers of San Francisco funded a rescue effort for the stranded Donner Party.
You can always rely on naval officers, I'll just say that.
Yeah, of course, yeah. That goes without being said. So remember, Reed reaches Sutter's Fort October 28th.
So Sutter's Fort is like one of the endpoints here?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Yeah, okay. So he's here and then he's getting troops and money or people.
He's
in
trying
mind.
to.
Okay, yeah, okay.
He's also fighting in a war, and he's
He's-
also
yeah.
securing land.
Okay, he's busy.
He's busy, he's a busy guy. So there was a rescue effort that was funded,
Mm-hmm.
as I said, by the citizens and naval officers of San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Due to several storm conditions, the distraction of the Mexican-American War, and the lack of available manpower, no rescues reached the mountain encampments for 3.5 months. I think that's where I was trying to go with
Yeah,
that.
Okay.
Reed shows up in October,
Yep.
and now we're talking early February of finally getting a funded rescue effort going.
I'm gonna guess, very hard to get into the Sierra Nevadas in February.
Yes, exactly. So on December 16th, and I'm backtracking a little bit, because now it's kind of like meanwhile, back at the camps.
Yeah.
In December 1846, more than a month after they became snowbound, 15 of the strongest members of the Donner Party strapped on makeshift snowshoes, so they're trying to make their own rescue effort happen,
Mm-hmm.
and tried to walk out of the mountains to find help. After wandering the frozen landscape for several days, they were left starving and on the verge of collapse. The hikers resigned themselves to cannibalism and considered drawing lots for a human sacrifice, or even having two of the men square off in a duel.
Yikes.
Several members of the party soon died naturally. Phew. However,
Boy, that sounds
some of the
real
survivors
hard.
roasted and consumed their corpses.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
The gruesome
Okay.
meat gave them the energy they required,
Oh man.
and following a month of walking, 7 of the original 15 made it to a ranch in California and helped organize rescue efforts. Historians would later dub their desperate hike the Forlorn Hope. So there's actually, during this hiking party, there's also a pair of Native Americans named Salvatore and Luis,
Mm-hmm.
both of whom had joined up with the Donner immigrants shortly before they became snowbound. They had refused to engage in cannibalism, and Salvatore and Luis later ran off out of fear that they might be murdered among the others, or when the others ran out of meat.
Yeah.
So the duo was found days later, exhausted and lying in snow, and a hiking party member did them in.
No.
And this was the only time during the entire winter that people were murdered for use as food. Want to have some cookies now? So meanwhile, back at the camp, so again, we're going back to the camp again. As their supplies dwindled, the Donner immigrants were still stranded at Truckee Lake.
Mm-hmm.
They resorted to eating increasingly grotesque meals. So actually these meals will probably sound better than the last meal we talked about. They slaughtered their pack animals, cooked their dogs,
Oh my gosh.
gnawed on leftover bones, and even boiled the animal hide roofs of their cabins into a foul paste.
Did what?
Their animal hides they used for the roofs of their makeshift cabins,
Oh my gosh.
they boiled them and made a foul paste out of them. Several people died from malnutrition, but the rest managed to subsist on morsels of boiled leather and tree bark
Oh my gosh.
until rescue parties arrived in February and March of 1847. So not all of the settlers were strong enough to escape, and those left behind were forced to cannibalize the frozen corpses of their comrades while waiting for future help. All told, roughly half the Donner Party survivors eventually resorted to eating human flesh. Was this a bad one to pick?
I mean, everybody's heard of the Donner Party, right? So this is
Cannibalism,
interesting to find out,
right?
like, how truly traumatic this must have been. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing when they left Independence, Missouri, they had supplies with them, right?
They did, but they
And
just
by the
didn't
time
have enough.
yeah,
They
by the
weren't
time
expecting to have
yeah,
a long shortcut
Yeah.
and get stranded for the winter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, of the 5 months the Donner Party spent trapped in the mountains, nearly half of it took place after they had already been located by rescuers. So, it was just any of the rescue expeditions that came out, they could only take a few at a time.
Okay.
And they had to pick the strongest at the time.
Yeah, right.
The first relief parties reached the settlers in February 1847, but since pack animals were unable to navigate the deep snowdrifts, they only brought whatever food and supplies they could carry. By then, many of the immigrants were too weak to travel, and several died while trying to walk out of the mountains. 4 relief teams in more than 2.5 months were eventually required to shepherd all of the Donner Party survivors back to civilization. The last to be rescued was Louis Kesselberg, a Prussian pioneer who was found in April 1847, supposedly half mad, and surrounded by the cannibalized bodies of his former companions. Kesselberg was later accused of having murdered the other emigrants for use as food, but the charges were never proven. So here's some good, positive news, I suppose.
Yeah, I could
You ready
use
for
some-
that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you want some uplifting?
Yeah, uplifting. Let's get
story
something
here?
uplifting from this trip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So perhaps the most famous of the Donner Party saviors was John Stark. He was a burly California settler who took part in the Third Relief Party. So in March of 1847, he and 2 other rescuers stumbled upon 11 immigrants, mostly kids, who had been left in the mountains by an earlier relief group. The 2 other rescuers each grabbed a single child and started hoofing it back down the slope, but Stark was unwilling to leave anyone behind. So instead, he rallied the weary adults, gathered the rest of the children, and began guiding the group single-handedly. Most of the kids were too weak to walk, so Stark took to carrying 2 of them at a time for a few yards, then setting them down in the snow and then going back for the others. He continued the grueling process all the way down the mountain and eventually led all 9 of his charges to safety.
That's awesome.
Speaking of the incident years later, one of the survivors credited her rescue to nobody but God and Stark and the Virgin Mary. Of the 81 pioneers who began the Donner Party's horrific winter in the Sierra Nevada, only 45 managed to walk out alive. The ordeal proved particularly costly for the group's 15 solo travelers. All but 2 of them died. But it also took a tragic toll on the families. George and Jacob Donner, both of their wives, and 4 of their children all perished. Pioneer William Eddy, meanwhile, lost his wife and his 2 kids. Nearly a dozen families had made up the Donner wagon train, but only 2, the Reeds and the Breens, so the Breens fellow was the one who started that diary.
Yep.
They managed to arrive in California without suffering a single death in the family. So the Reeds, so James Reed comes back and he saves his family that he was separated from.
All right, that's good news.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, actually maybe I get to that later. I don't believe they took advantage of eating other people. So only 45 of the original 81 members, as I said, survived. 32 of them were children. Most were physically scarred from frostbite and malnutrition, and psychologically disturbed by the horrors of what they experienced in the camps and what they had to do to survive. The Reed family, however, went on to prosper as one of the original settlers of San Jose, California.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So, jumping ahead a little bit, the discovery of gold in California, 1848,
Gold rush.
would turn the flow of migrants into a virtual flood, and the legacy of the Donner Party would become less a cautionary tale and more a grim historical footnote in the story of the great westward movement. So other things that you may be wondering, in 2004, archaeologists unearthed a cooking hearth in the Sierra Nevada where they believe the Donner Party gathered for meager meals in the months before starvation led to the country's most famous tale of cannibalism. After examining remains from the Alder Creek campsite, researchers in 2010 announced that they had been unable to find any human bones or other physical evidence of cannibalism. The researchers themselves clarified, however, that the absence of archaeological evidence did not rule out the possibility that cannibalism had occurred, especially given the extensive contemporary accounts by members of the rescue parties and the survivor themselves.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure that one guy's diary probably
Yeah.
was pretty open about what was going on there.
Yeah. And yeah, even the members of the rescue parties, they came and they were taking notes too of what they saw. Like, even though they didn't actually witness it happening in front of them,
Right.
they could,
Yeah.
write down what.
Yeah, they could
They
probably make some
experienced-
inferences about what was happening among the group there.
So, if you remember, one of the Breen family, that family was intact after the whole
They all
Donner
did.
Party debacle.
Yeah.
So Isabel Breen, she died in South Bay in 1935.
Wow.
Because she was just 1 year old.
Okay. She
Yeah.
probably, and she doesn't have any memories.
No.
for sure.
So with her death, she was the very last of the Donner Party survivors who quietly left the earth.
Yeah.
So that is the story of the Donner Party.
That's interesting. I mean, there's no doubt that it was absolutely traumatic for everybody involved. So.
You're absolutely right. I just, as I said, I couldn't imagine making that trek and trying to even get through these lands that are just overgrown with stuff because no one had ever gone through it before.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't have the slightest clue of what was waiting for them.
Right.
I mean, I know there was a real fear of Native Americans, of different tribes,
Yeah.
threatening them, or,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
whole story and tales of scalping and whatnot. But
Right.
I believe they did come across some very friendly Native Americans
Yeah.
who traded with them,
Yeah.
which was a positive experience.
Right.
But
Right.
they even had, as I said in my story here, that they even had some trail guides who were Native American too, who were willing to help out when
Sure.
they didn't have to.
Yeah. It's interesting having been to the West Coast, living in Seattle or outside Seattle. When you live on the East Coast and you think like mountains or, you think like Bristol Mountain is not far from here, it's like 2,000 feet, right?
Right.
But these mountains out here, these are like 12 to 14,000 feet. I mean, they're huge. They're just, and so I wonder if people who are coming west just were completely unprepared for how different the geography is on the West Coast
Right.
than it was in, Illinois or even Missouri. Yeah, I feel terrible that, it seemed like once one thing went wrong, it was sort of like a domino. It was like, okay, well, the trail isn't actually what we thought. And then the trail guide doesn't show up. And then it's the weather is bad. And then, they have already left late. So there's all these things that just kept piling on and piling on. And then they just are trapped there.
I think the location where the Alder Creek camp is now like a picnic area.
Okay, is what?
It's a picnic area. Which that's kind of ironic.
Yeah.
Like, people can sit there and eat their lunch knowing that kind of stuff happened there.
I'm not sure I would want to stop there for a rest break. I don't know. I don't think I'd want to have a picnic there. I mean, yeah, like you said, they just had to be, the survivors had to be scarred for the rest of their lives. And also probably really thankful that they made it out.
Oh, yeah. Right. I believe one of the survivors, she just, no matter where she was going when she left the house, she always had some kind of candy or cookies or something on her. Like, she could never leave the house empty-handed without any type of food anymore.
Right.
And of course, they were hounded by press, journalists,
I'm sure.
looking to find what the real story was.
Yeah, I'm sure it was like very sensational too.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I feel like even now it's kind of sensational. It's like, wow, they were eating their fellow trail mates.
You had kids eating their father.
Yeah, I mean that's
I mean, in some cases, of course we weren't there, but in some cases it sounded like the father may have given his blessing to his children to do what they needed to do to survive.
Yeah.
So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible that anybody made it, really. I mean, it sounds like, what was it, more than half of the people survived and made it to California. I sincerely hope that they had happy lives when they got to California and they were able to
try to make the best of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I just think the whole migration west is an interesting story, and this is just another part of it. And thanks for sharing.
Sure, you're welcome. Sorry, it was so grotesque.
No. I mean, that's part of the story, right? I mean, that's just, that is. I guess I didn't realize there were all these different trails out there too, and like some half of them.
And they made a poor decision.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think I realized that. I thought it was just a group of pioneers who got stuck.
Who got stuck.
I mean, which is basically what happened.
Right.
But there was so many mistakes that were made along the way that, really.
And they also were
cost
piled up on
dearly.
each other.
Yeah.
It's like leaving late. Okay, then there's the trail's not marked, or the trail guide's like, go this way. It's easier. Well, it's not actually easier. It's longer and it's more complicated, and it's just it's pretty awful.
Yeah.
I feel for them.
All right, you ready for some cookies?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Alright, so I got these yesterday. I don't know, I like the color. I feel like I sort of matched the cookies.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah. A little bit
Not
too.
me.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, here you go.
So should we say like where they're from, or just
Here, I'm gonna look at this so that
Yeah, okay, there we go. I just like the place that makes these cookies. They're just local grocery
the
store.
place in question.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Yeah, you always know what you're getting when you get cookies. They kind of taste the same. The sugar cookies too, the frosting.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that was really interesting. I'm glad to know a little bit more about the Donner Party.
You probably never want to hear about it again.
I don't ever want to
You're all set?
I'm not going to take a trail.
Is that what you recall about
Yeah.
it when you watched the shows?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to say it was like one of those American Experience shows, and they talked about how difficult it was. Being stuck in the Sierra Nevadas in the winter would be really, really hard.
You need to do trivia or something. We're brushing up on all this stuff.
I'd have like trivia contest at CrimeCon. Like that would be awesome.
They should.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
We're
crime.
going to crime.
We are going to crime.
That needs to be said.
Looking forward to it.
For those of you who don't know who CrimeCon is, it's a true crime convention. And this year it's in Orlando. It's an annual convention because you can talk about crime.
Yeah, there's going to be other podcasters there who do true crime podcasts, so that's going to be really awesome too.
Let's get one thing straight: we're not a presenter.
Yeah. They haven't asked us to.
Yeah.
Maybe next year though. I mean, actually I was on their website today and I found out how you can apply to be part of the. So.
Oh man.
I mean, I feel like we've got a good gig here. I feel like we do a pretty good job. What do you think?
I'll let our listeners and viewers to make that decision for us.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
We're a little biased.
We are.
I mean, we think we're awesome.
We think we're funny. So, our development cookie.
Yeah, that was really good. I would get these again.
So-
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do next month or next time?
Do you want me to say it?
No.
Okay. I already know what I'm doing, and I'm doing a lot of research on it. And one of my favorite shows, which all three listeners know, that Unsolved Mysteries is like one of my favorite shows.
Yes.
And they did this really in-depth study into the case I'm going to talk about, which is interesting. It's got some different parts to it, so I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I use history.com, nationalgeographic.com, Britannica.com, and then of course the podcast I listened to Against the Odds for my presentation today.
So what was their take on the podcast? Kind of like.
Well, it's more of a story-based account, so they are going off of other people's accounts and then crafting a story around it.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's some like freedom there as to what someone actually said, what did someone actually do in that situation. So you kind of have to back away and just recognize it for what it is. They focused on James Reed and the two Donner families.
Yes, but they were brothers.
Yeah, and then the other one was that last guy that was saved. He was kind of a jerk the whole trail. He forced like one of his immigrant workers to get out of the wagon then because his oxen couldn't pull him anymore. So other families came across this gentleman who was walking along the trail, and nobody could pick him up because they just couldn't. They felt bad about it. But the other guy just kicked him out of his wagon.
Yeah.
So and he had done something else too. And then there was another guy that caused problems. He was the one that wanted James Reed to be hung for the murder.
Yeah.
He was the one that hit or it was something else too. I'm trying to remember what else he did, but you know, tensions were running high.
I'm sure.
So,
I mean, they're starving.
You're starving.
Scared.
You don't like somebody.
Yeah.
And kind of goes hand in hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What happened to the one guy's
Oh, I don't know
daughter?
if that's what it was. Kesselberg also, they think he murdered, who was it? I think I mentioned a William Eddy. They do talk about a William Eddy in the podcast.
Mhm.
He came back to rescue his kids because he was part of that.
Okay.
Like, he had gone out, I believe he was on with the snowshoe
Okay.
rescue effort, and then he came back to get his kids, and there was some thought there that Kesselberg had killed Eddie's kids
Oh my
for
gosh.
food.
Oh my gosh.
So there's that
That's
too. And as I said, Kesselberg was not found guilty of any crimes, but there are some suspicions there.
What happened to the guy's diary? Like, what happened to him and his diary after was he saved?
Yeah, because he was part of that family that made it.
Okay,
through
and they made it-
It was the
okay.
Reed family, and it was the Reed family.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good thing that he had a written record.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was really interesting. I'm glad to know a little bit more about them, and it gives you a new appreciation for how easy we have it when we drive coast to coast.
Oh yeah.
I've
And
driven
all today's
from-
luxuries that we have.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've driven because we were stationed on the West Coast, drove back and forth out to Seattle and then back, and I mean, what are we driving on paved roads?
I know.
You know,
Air-conditioned cars.
Air-conditioned cars. You can stop whenever you want to
For
get something
food.
to eat.
Yeah.
You can spend the night somewhere. You know, it's so much easier. And
Yeah.
yeah, those the settlers who went west, they had a difficult journey in lots of different ways. So, but thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. All right. Well, until next time.
Yeah.
We'll see you later.